You look at me now, and you might see a guy who's done all right. A decent suit, a clean office, maybe a nice car in the parking lot. But trust me, every brick in this building, every thread in this shirt, it's a monument to a past you wouldn't believe. A past I fought, tooth and nail, to escape. My story didn't start in a warm bed or a loving home. It started on a cracked sidewalk. I was born in a city that's famous for its skyscrapers, its dreams, its endless opportunities. But for some of us, those dreams felt miles away, hidden behind walls we couldn't climb. My earliest memories aren't of lullabies or toys, but of hunger. A gnawing, constant ache in my stomach that defined my waking hours. My mother, she tried. God, she tried. She was a ghost of a woman, ravaged by addiction, but there were flickers. Moments where her eyes would clear, and she'd try to smooth my hair, or hum a forgotten tune. But mostly, she was lost to a world I couldn't comprehend. My father was just a concept, a name muttered in frustration, a phantom limb of a family I never truly knew. So, the streets became my home, the alleys, my bedroom, and fear, my constant companion. Food was a daily hunt. Every discarded crust, every half-eaten piece of fruit, it was a victory. I learned to be quick, to be quiet, to be invisible. School was a faraway concept. I'd see other kids, clean clothes, backpacks, laughing as they walked past the alleyways. They were from another planet. A planet where you knew where your next meal was coming from. There's a certain kind of cold that poverty brings. It's not just the biting wind in winter, or the dampness of a leaky roof. It's the coldness of indifference. The way people look through you, not at you. The way the world keeps spinning, oblivious to the desperate, silent screams of a hungry child. You learn to expect nothing, to trust no one, to be ready to run at any moment. There were moments, though. Glimmers. A kind older lady who'd sometimes leave a sandwich on a park bench. A shop owner who, instead of yelling, just shook his head and handed me a stale bagel. These weren't handouts. They were lifelines. Proof that even in the vast ocean of human indifference, there were islands of kindness. Small, fragile, but enough to keep a flicker of hope alive. I remember one night, huddled in a cardboard box, the city lights a distant blur. I looked up at the stars, and for the first time, I felt a sense of something beyond the hunger, beyond the cold. A whisper. A feeling that there had to be more. That I had to be more. It was a faint whisper, barely audible over the rumbling of my stomach, but it was there. That whisper eventually led me to Mrs. Chen's diner. It was a greasy spoon, the kind that smelled of old coffee and burnt toast. I was maybe 13. I'd seen a "Help Wanted" sign, written on a torn piece of cardboard. I walked in, all scrawny limbs and desperate hope. Mrs. Chen just looked me up and down, probably saw the grime, the hunger in my eyes. But she also saw something else. Something I didn't even know was there. Mrs. Chen was tough. She didn't coddle me. She didn't offer sympathy. She offered work. And respect, if you earned it. And I earned it. Every single day. That diner wasn't just a job, it was a sanctuary. It was my first taste of stability, of knowing where my next meal was coming from. And for the first time, I had a roof over my head, even if it was just a cot in the back storeroom. Mrs. Chen pushed me. "You want more than scrubbing floors, boy? Then you learn." So, after my shifts, I'd go to the public library. I was ashamed, at first. ashamed of my ragged clothes, my halting speech. But the librarians, they just smiled. They pointed me to books, to old encyclopedias. I started to read. Everything. History, science, stories about people who came from nothing and built empires. And for the first time, I realized that education wasn't just for other kids. It was a weapon, a tool, a way out. I took the decision to finish my school education. Mrs. Chen called it a big dream, but it was my dream, and I decided to complete it at any cost. I worked double shifts, saved every penny. I studied until my eyes burned and completed my school studies. After school, I applied for every scholarship, every grant I could find. And somehow, against all odds, I got in. A community college, initially. But it was a start. It was a foot in the door. College was a culture shock. I felt like an alien. These kids, they talked about their parents, their summer trips, their worries about term papers. My worries were about making rent, about having enough for bus fare, about whether I'd eaten that day. But I held on to that whisper, that deep-seated conviction that this was my chance. And I wasn't going to waste it. I failed a class once. Algebra. My old nemesis. It felt like the end of the world. All that work, all that sacrifice, for nothing. I remember walking out of that exam, the cold city air hitting me, and for a moment I felt that old, familiar despair creeping back in. The despair of the cracked sidewalk. But then, I remembered Mrs. Chen. I remembered those flickering moments with my mother. I remembered that whisper. I failed, Mrs. Chen. I can't do this. I'm not smart enough. Emerse. Chen replied, David, you think success is just falling into your lap? No. It's getting back up when you fall. You study harder. You ask for help. You don't give up. You hear me? You don't give up. And I didn't. I retook the class. I found a tutor. I spent even more hours in the library. I learned that failure isn't the end. It's just a really, really tough lesson. It's part of the process. After graduating, I got a job. Not glamorous. Entry level. But it was a start. And I approached it the same way I approached everything else, with relentless hard work. I was the first one in, the last one out. I volunteered for every extra project. I asked questions. I learned. Because for me, it wasn't just a job. It was another rung on the ladder out of that alleyway. It was proof that the whisper had been right. My journey wasn't a straight line. There were detours, setbacks, moments when I felt like giving up. But every time, that memory of the cracked sidewalk, of the gnawing hunger, of the cold indifference, it fueled me. It reminded me what I was fighting for. Not just for myself, but for that scared kid, huddled in the cardboard box, dreaming of something more. I never forgot where I came from. The streets taught me resilience. Mrs. Chen taught me discipline. The library taught me the power of knowledge. And the whisper taught me to believe in myself, even when no one else did. This is a reminder. I carved it myself, years ago. Not as skilled as my dad, but it's a reminder that even from the roughest wood, something beautiful can emerge. And it's a reminder that life, no matter how hard it hits you, it always gives you chances. Little chances. Big chances. Sometimes, they're barely whispers in the dark. But if you listen, if you work, if you refuse to give up, you can grab hold of them. and you can build a life you once only dreamed of. So, if you're out there, and you're fighting your own battle, against poverty, against circumstance, against despair, remember that whisper. Remember the cracks in the sidewalk, and the tenacious weed that grows through them. Remember that even in the darkest alleys, there are embers of hope. And if you fan them, if you work tirelessly, if you never ever give up, you can turn that whisper into a roar. You can rewrite your story. And you can build your own skyscraper of dreams,